Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Are we all catching up on our assignments that people say, well, I didn't know anything. You know, I had no idea. But again, the bottom line, just think about it. If I do recordings every week and you do nothing, right? I mean, the point is the office cannot tell if you're actually listening or doing the work if you don't send me anything back, right? And I'm sure there would be some that would do that, right? It would just say at the end, hey, I've done everything, but there has to be some kind of record, just like when we go to the regular class and you sign in on the sheets, right? There's no sheets to sign in here. So obviously you have to do something, right? So that we can make sure you actually do have attendance, right? So again, it looks like people are catching up though, week by week, doing their assignments, right? So we'll get there. It's no problem. We're in week 4 here. And unfortunately, like if you've had my class, usually week 4 is just review, but we can't do that because I have time to fill. I just can't let you answer and run away. Plus, I don't know if you answer, right? So I have to do material. So today's material will not be on the midterm, okay? It'll go towards the final. And I can still not make the test cumulative, which means it won't be all the chapters. The early parts will be in the midterm and the later parts, I can still separate that for you to make it easier for you to get a good grade, okay? But you do have to have some kind of participation that is visible, at least to me, so that I can tell the office, right? Okay. All right, so let me start getting into week 4. Okay, so again, History 101, United States history through 1876. This would be the Monday morning class for 8:30 to or 8 p.m. to 12, or 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Thank you. Okay. All right. So here we go. Foundations of freedom. The early French and English settlers disputed boundaries and territories throughout the vast Ohio Valley region between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River. In many respects, the French and Indian War set the stage for the American Revolution. The French suffered a humiliating defeat, and as a result, the French would do almost anything to take revenge against the British, even if the French monarchy could not afford public financial support of American causes. Next, the British position. Britain had been engaged in the 7 Years' War in Europe, of which the American conflict had been only a part, so a small part. The British treasury had to be replenished as the war efforts nearly doubled the national debt. So they had a lot of debt there, just like the United States has now. King George III, now sitting high as the monarch of all North American lands, east of the Mississippi, tried to exert a little muscle, or use a little muscle, that's what that means, and tighten his rein on the colonies. Rein is what you use on a horse to make it stop. So they're using the same thing on the colonies. He had a tight control of the colonies. This vast kingdom would require not only further sources of revenue, money, but additional administration, or so the king thought. One of King George's edicts was the Proclamation of 1763, whereby the king established a boundary beyond which colonists could not settle. So that's like saying, like we're having an issue with the governor now and our beaches in Orange County. So You know, if he says something like, well, you can't even go to the beaches in San Diego, but that's not, he can't do that. But if he did, right, we all know you can't go to the beaches in San Diego. It's a different jurisdiction. So here they're just saying you can only live to a certain boundary. You can't go anywhere farther. That area belongs to the king and Britain. However, this did little to dampen the pioneer spirit or stop. In fact, it spurred many adventurous souls to further exploration and trespassing. So again, people said, the hell with that, I'm still going to pass the boundary. I'm still going to pass the DMZ or the border. So, and like we have folks now, they're still going to go to the beach. Okay, continuing. No taxation without representation. When Parliament tried to raise revenues at home, meaning England, the British subjects rioted in protest of additional levies or fines, taxes. And they succeeded in making their point. Still in the need of money, the British government looked across the ocean and said, oh, those guys in the colonies, those are easy pickings. Parliament levied high duties on various commodities needed in the colonies, everyday items such as molasses and sugar. I hope everybody has at least tried molasses by now here in the States. Thus, the Sugar Act, passed in 1764, became the first significant tax demand of colonists. Furthermore, Parliament passed the Currency Act, currency being money, whereby the colonies could not issue their own money. They had to use the British money. All transactions had to be made with gold. Oh, and gold. This angered the independent-minded colonists who did not want to be financially dependent on England. In addition, Parliament decided to enforce a previous law that had been passed in the 1650s, but largely ignored. The Acts of Trade and Navigation, commonly known as Navigation Acts, were designed to protect commerce. The Navigation Act of 1651 stipulated that goods imported or exported by British colonies, including those in Africa, Asia, or America, had to be shipped on vessels or ships constructed by British soldiers. Or British shipbuilders. The crews sailing these vessels also had to have 75% British crewmen. Goods from the colonies also had to arrive on British ships, no colonial ships. The Act of 1660 stated that the colonists could ship particular items such as tobacco, rice, and indigo only to British colonies or the mother country. Okay, where I have it, that's the end of 36. So let me put the questions up for this page, okay? I don't want to get ahead or confuse myself here or us. So, your first question. Maybe if I could spell, that would be okay. Okay, what was King George's proclamation of 1763? What was it? Okay, question 2. Simple question, simple answer, right? Trying to keep this simple for you. Okay, what was the Sugar Act of 1764? As you can see in these two questions, I'm supplying the dates for you. I'm not asking you for the dates. I want to make it easier for you. It's hard to remember things that coincide with dates. And the last one for this page. Oh, this temperamental machine. What was the Currency Act? Remember, currency has to deal with money. Okay. What was the Currency Act? So again, this is the time I let you write down these questions so you don't say I'm erasing them too quickly. Okay, so again, what was King George's proclamation of 1763? What was the Sugar Act of 1764? What was the Currency Act? Okay, I'm going to erase these now. Bingo. Bongo. Bango. Okay, get back to this interesting lecture. Okay, so I'll pick it up from colonists were not permitted to trade with other countries. Further acts prevented the manufacture of products such as hats and iron in the colonies, for it was thought that industry in America would threaten its stability in England. The Navigation Acts weren't repealed or turned back until 1849. New England town meetings were still common in the 1760s. And it was at one of these that the colonists bonded around the famous slogan, "No taxation without representation." When the New Englanders protested peacefully with a boycott of English goods, Parliament took little notice. They thought, it's not important. Shortly thereafter, the Quartering Act of 1765 declared that colonial citizens would have to provide food and housing for royal troops, a decree that understandably cast a financial hardship on the colonials as well as blatant invasion of personal privacy. So how would you like that? You're living in your area and then they say, hey, you got to put up soldiers, maybe 10 in your house. And, they're not the kind of guys that like to share. So they're probably going to eat all your good food and you're going to get nothing. But the government says that's what's going to go on. If you get soldiers angry that have guns and you don't, it's not going to be a good situation. Next is the Stamp Act. In mother country, if the mother country hadn't already seemed tax happy, which means they're giving away or assigning too many taxes, the worst was yet to come as the British Parliament began to tax even more products. This time, the Stamp Act required colonists to pay extra for newspapers, land deeds, dice. I guess they allowed gambling, but they had to pay extra for dice, and card games, even graduation diplomas. Since every paper document would require a revenue stamp from a British agent. This further infuriated or made angry, that's what that means, the colonists, who earnestly held to the belief that these taxes were the result of their lack of representation in the British Parliament or government. Interestingly enough, Prime Minister Grenville had given the colonies an opportunity. Okay, so now we're going to go to our fun fact. Prior to the enactment or the start of the Grenville Program in 1765, the Crown's taxes on the colonists had been external. In other words, taxes on commerce that America engaged in with the rest of the world, i.e., example, tariffs. Stamp Act passed on March 22, 1765, was the first internal tax, a tax on the activities of the colonists within their own localities. Okay, and that brings me to the bottom of 37. So I've got 2 quick questions there on 37. Let me get to those. Okay. Okay. What was the famous slogan of the colonists at the time? So, of course, I'm going to get a student that's going to say, what's a slogan? I don't know. Okay, In-N-Out has a slogan. Okay, In-N-Out, that's what a hamburger's all about. What's the Samsung slogan? Does anybody know the Samsung slogan? Every time you turn on their TV, it says, life is good. Okay, so there was a famous slogan that the colonists said at this time. It was very important for their situation. Okay. So like I said, only 2 questions here on this page. It's short. Okay, what did the Stamp Act force? It forced the poor colonists to do something, right? So you should be able to find what that is. Right? It shouldn't be an issue. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds here to write those 2. And we've quickly done 2 pages. Everybody's really excited. It's beginning of May now. Hopefully they will lift the lockdown orders and we can go back. And I can see you at school. Yay. Then you have to come to class, actually participate. It might be tough for some. Okay, let me get the eraser. Okay, bye-bye 4, bye-bye 5. Okay, back to this juicy lecture. Okay. Okay, so I've already read the fun fact. So let me finish the bottom of the page there. The dissenters succeeded in getting the measure repealed, but the victory was bittersweet. So that means some of it was sweet, some of it was bitter. The next edict, the Declaratory Act, stated that the British Parliament could create laws for the colonies. However, it saw fit. That's pretty bad. I don't think I'll ask you a question about that. The Townshend Acts levied tariffs on imports such as glass, lead, paint, and tea. The colonial protest was alive and well, and in April 1770, Parliament repealed the Townshend taxes except for the levy on the tea. Okay. Okay, let me proceed to the Boston Massacre. On March 5th, 1770, Colonists living in Boston were demonstrating in front of the not too popular Customs House, where British troops had been called to quell or stop the American protests. The colonists felt beleaguered, or it's an old term for overwhelmed. And if you can imagine the scene, there were probably harsh words and bitter tensions, which means probably people were cussing and had a lot of stress. The squad of soldiers responded by firing shots into the crowd. Crispus Attucks, leader of this group, protesting colonists, became the first to die for American liberty. And you'll see paintings of him in museums, in addition to 4 others. Attucks was of mixed descent, most likely a man of Black, white, and Native American heritage. The event became known as the Boston Massacre, depicted or shown by Paul Revere in one of his most famous engravings. In 1888, a monument was erected in the Boston Common to honor Attucks and the others who gave their liberties or lives for liberty. Before I jump into the fun fact, just to let you know, if you can't guess another reason why this was the first person shot, he was extremely tall. So he was the biggest target there was in the group of people, poor guy. So that's a big reason why he was actually shot first. He was a small person. They probably just would have shot in the crowd, but he was a very large target, poor man. Okay, let me go to the fun fact. Paul Revere's engraving of the Boston Massacre is a good example of colonial propaganda. Revere shows the British soldiers standing in a straight line and firing point blank into a mostly unarmed, defenseless group of soldiers, or colonists. Most eyewitness accounts did not agree with Revere's description of the event. Who were these eyewitnesses? Were they the British soldiers? In retrospect, which means it's a term for meaning in looking back, the Boston Massacre, though a tragic brawl means fight, was probably not as heroic as the patriots depicted it. I don't know, why wouldn't it be? Nonetheless, it stirred passions for personal liberty, justice, and independence. Following the assault, John Hancock joined the others, demanding the removal of British troops from Boston. Perhaps sensing that this was a no-win situation, the British acquiesced or agreed, and indeed withdrew them. Okay, so that brings me to the bottom of 39, and I'm going to put the questions up here. Okay, we can do this. Okay, board, text. Okay, so here we go. Number 6. Okay. Oops, put this back. Who was Crispus Attucks? Okay, who was Crispus Attucks? Did he sell crispy fried chicken? Who was this guy? Was he a basketball player? That's giving you a hint. Next. What happened? What happened at the Boston Massacre? Hopefully my students don't think, was that a concert? Three bands played from Boston and, you know, they served a lot of wine. No, it was not a concert, okay? So please let me know what happened at the Boston Massacre. Okay, no, and the last question on this page. So if you get the answer of 7, then this should help you get the answer for 8. They are connected. John Hancock demanded what after the Boston Massacre? And he got it too, but what did he want? Did he want some free delivery from Grubhub? What did he want after the Boston Massacre? Right? Did he want some delivery of jajangmyeon? Who knows? Right? I don't think jajangmyeon was in the United States at the time. Probably not in Korea either. That's a Korean-Chinese fusion. So again, here's your time to do these 3 questions. Who was Crispus Attucks? Again, not crispy style chicken. What happened at the Boston Massacre? And John Hancock demanded what after the Boston Massacre? Okay. We get the eraser. Here we go. Out, out, out. Okay, back to the delicious lecture. No, it's very delicious. Okay. Okay. So T, anyone? After the repeal of the Townshend Acts, the tea tax was the only remaining tariff. Again, to really understand the magnitude of this colonial dilemma, you have to envision yourself reared or grown up with the English tradition of sipping this favorite cup of brew. And even though Parliament awarded a monopoly on the sale of tea to Britain's primary tea producer, the East India Company, which sold tea directly at lower prices than the colonial middleman could offer, the issue of taxation stung, which means it hurt with the extra tax. Sipping a little less tea was indeed a small annoyance made into a mountain of resentment. Resentment is like a han in Korean, right? It hurts and you have a grudge because of the tax. So when 500,000 pounds of tea was sent to the 4 primary ports, Philadelphia, New York, Charleston, and Boston, anti-British sentiment or feeling rallied to the point that tea-laden, or means they were full of tea, ships turned back from Philadelphia and New York, unable to unload. It's too violent to unload there. In Charleston, although the tea was unloaded, it was stored rather than sold. So they stopped the selling of it. That left Boston, where the governor was adamant or felt very strongly that colonists pay the levy. In 1773, as the loaded ship sat at anchor, Samuel Adams, before he sold beer, right? Paul Revere and some 50 patriots, some dressed as Native Americans, boarded the ships and dumped 343 chests of tea into Boston Harbor. This bold act, known as the Boston Tea Party, met with the king's wrath or hate, revenge. In response, he closed the port of Boston and imposed a military form of government. The colonist civil liberties were further curtailed or stopped or cut when they were forced to house the British troops that occupied Massachusetts. Indeed, these restrictions, known as intolerable acts, were meant to punish the citizens of Massachusetts for their rebellious attitude. It didn't take long for the other colonies to surmise or understand that their liberty also might be at stake. Okay, First Continental Congress. In September and October of 1774, colonial leaders met in Philadelphia's Carpenter's Hall for the First Continental Congress. The Massachusetts House of Representatives had called for an intercolonial Congress that would take any actions necessary to preserve or establish colonial rights. Only Georgia was not represented among the 55 delegates of the First Continental Congress. So that brings me to the bottom of 40. I've got two quick questions there on 40 for you. So again, let me get out of here. Go to the whiteboard. Okay. Easy stuff, easy questions. What was the Boston Tea Party? Okay, I don't want any of my sports fans here telling me, oh, that was the party that the Boston Celtics had the last time they beat the Lakers. No, this was hundreds of years before that happened. So what was the Boston Tea Party? Like I said, I only have two questions for you here, so pretty quick stuff. Okay. Okay, what was the purpose of the First Continental Congress? What was the purpose? Was it to make a chain of pizza parlors? What was the purpose? So again, you got a couple seconds here to do these. 1, 2, it's over. Just kidding. 9, what was the Boston Tea Party? I didn't put 10, but we know it's 10. What was the purpose of the First Continental Congress? Okay. So we're just burning through today very quickly. We've done 4 pages. Wow. Which is good because we have 25 pages to do. Believe me. Everybody just faint right now? Okay. All my sons, what? Like Caroline or Saddam, what did you say? No. Okay. All right, back to saving this. So, yes, okay, so we're up here, bringing. Okay. Bringing even this small number of representatives together was no easy task. They bickered, which means argued. It's an old term. They bickered about who would give the opening prayer, and they disputed how many votes each colony would have, until they finally settled on 1 vote for each colony, regardless of that colony's size. In fact, the British attempts to divide colonial support almost, so don't forget that, almost succeeded. In a pamphlet, which we know is a small paper book, but it's just soft paper, in a pamphlet titled A Summary View of the Rights of British America. How do you like that? British America. Thomas Jefferson of Virginia denounced all parliamentary legislation. So he's saying more or less, Thomas Jefferson, that this British law is garbage. Joseph Galloway of Pennsylvania proposed a much more conciliatory plan, or liked or agreeable plan, that would create a grand council overseeing matters of taxation and legislation in association with a royally approved governor general. The delegates did away with Galloway's plan, but only by a narrow margin. They adopted the views of more radical patriots, like those outlined in the Suffolk Resolves, the documents that Paul Revere had in hand when he galloped is when you ride on a horse very quickly, into Philadelphia from beleaguered or worried Boston. This document enumerated or showed one by one, step by step, many colonial grievances or disagreements that they had, and demanded that the British back down over certain items, and gave the ultimatum that if the British did not acquiesce or agree, they would face consequences. So if you don't know what ultimatum is, for all the single guys out there, after you date your girlfriend for a few years and she wants to get married to you, she will give you an ultimatum and say, let's get married within 6 months, or I'm leaving you for John Dongun. So that's what an ultimatum is, right? I think I had a girlfriend gave me an ultimatum, but I don't remember what happened. I think I fainted. I'm not sure. Okay, so we got the fun fact here. Ooh, it's actually a fun fact question. What was the punishment for rebelling against the British Crown? I'm going to promise you it's going to be pretty bad. Probably worse than what you can imagine. Something out of a modern horror movie. Just goes to show you human beings have always been the same. It's the beginning of time. So you ready? Yeah, I'm going to go to it. Here we go. A rebel would be dragged to the gallows. The gallows is a place where they hang your body. Then they hang you by the neck, and then they cut you down alive. So they don't kill you by hanging you, they cut you down alive. Your intestines would be taken out and burned in front of you while you were still alive. Your head would be cut off, and the person's body divided into 4 parts, as his head and his lower areas would be at the king's disposal. Like I said, that's almost like out of a zombie movie. It's terrible. Still hoping to reconcile their complaints with the British Crown, the delegates approved the Declaration of Rights and Grievances. Members of the First Continental Congress concluded their sessions by agreeing to meet again in May 1775. Were any of my students alive in 1775? Just a few? Okay. To vote on stronger measures if the British had not addressed their grievances. They had taken the first steps toward freedom. Again, very scary time, but they had to do what they had to do. So give them credit. Those are the first steps towards freedom and having this country where all you guys are at the present time, even me. Okay, so that brings me to the bottom of 41, where I have, again, just 2 questions. I'm going too kind on you guys. What's the deal? Just too easy. This should be 11. Hopefully you guys don't get an ultimatum. Okay, what did Thomas Jefferson demand? Did he demand a lot of ketchup for his French fries or something more serious? What did he demand? So the last one, I said only 2 for this page. Okay, 12. Ooh, we read that fun fact. Remember the fun fact, if you know it's not too much fun. Oops, didn't spell that correctly. Have patience. Okay, what was the punishment for rebelling against the king? What was the punishment? Did the British police give you a verbal warning? Don't do that again. Did they give you a $50 ticket that you had to go to court in downtown LA? What was the punishment for rebelling against the king? Okay, so I'm giving you your 2 seconds there. The first one, what did Thomas Jefferson demand? Again, did he demand a lot of ketchup or extra ketchup for his French fries? Or was he demanding extra side of taquan for his kimbap? And then 12, what was the punishment for rebelling against the king? Was it a slap on the wrist or a firm? Please don't do that again. What was it? Okay, I get the eraser. 11 is done, 12 is out. Go back to the juicy reading. Okay, so let me mark that down. 41 is now done. So it looks like we only have 20 more pages. Okay, because I had said it was 25, so I'll be generous, only do 20, right? Hi, Caroline. Are you getting upset? All right. Or maybe it's Titan. Okay, so I read to the left, so I got to move over to the right, the Declaration of Independence. Okay, I'm on 45, making sure. Okay. Right. After the Battle of Bunker Hill, there had been too much bloodshed to permit peace or compromise. So that means too many people had died and people were not going to settle for just peace now. Things had to happen more, I guess, bloodshed or violence. The Second Continental Congress requested that Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Roger Sherman, and Robert R. Livingston draft or write up a formal protest against Britain. Remember, it's not formal unless you write it. In line with Lee's resolution declaring the colonies free of British rule. Not satisfied with the wording of this declaration on July 6, Dickinson petitioned Congress for one more shot or one more try at the document. Thus, Congress approved a final olive branch petition in 1775. Once again, the king rejected it. Of course, he has all the power. In December, Parliament passed the Prohibitory Act, outlawing trade with the rebellious colonies and establishing a naval blockade, which means He brought his ships to block the harbor so no other countries could come in and trade. Britain went one step further, sending additional troops and German mercenaries, better known as the Hessians. Acts undoubtedly meant to bring the patriots to their knees, begging forgiveness. Again, mercenaries are soldiers. Uh, Obviously, they're originally a soldier from their own country, but now they are free and they will work for other countries for money. And that's why they're called mercenaries. So at this time, Britain was using German mercenaries. They had quite a fierce reputation at the time. They didn't, meaning the colonies and colonialists did not break. Even the more moderate factions began contemplating, which is a high-level word for thinking, all-out war against the mother country, England. Okay, so let me get to the next fun fact. Okay, the Magna Carta was a 13th century English legal document on which the United States based much of its original laws. England's powerful barons forced King John to grant a charter limiting his powers. The Magna Carta helped establish the principle that no one, not even a king, is above the law. And that's your fun fact. Now, finishing up a little bit, and then I have questions. This would be 45. Committee members selected Thomas Jefferson, who was, among other things, an attorney who had reputation for being a stellar or very good writer to finish the draft. The resulting document was the Declaration of Independence. And that's what ends on my page. So I have to ask you some questions here from 45. Okay. Be strong. I think I have 3 questions here, not 2. So be strong. But we have to fill in the time and learn all that we can. Okay. So name some people that drafted the Second Continental Congress. Now, you know, this goes along with my usual test questions. The more you give me, meaning the longer the list, the more points I can give you. I'll still have many students that they'll read some and they'll give me 1 person. Okay. So if you give me 2, you'll get more points than them. If you give me 3, it's quite a few on this list. So the more you can name, the more points I can give you. That's up to you. Okay. The next question. Okay, what did it declare? 14 is connected to 13, so before you get crazy, we're talking about the Continental Congress, the Second Continental Congress. What did it declare? So if you know 13, you can answer 14. See how kind I am? You can give me tips later, okay, at the end of the quarter. Here's a good one you should know. Most American high school students remember this. I think I do, even if you forget most other things. Okay, and the last question for this page. What did the U.S. base much of its original laws on? So there's a certain document there that they based most of their laws on that came from a different company, or not company, country. So did they base their laws on Buddhism, Confucianism, Judaism? What did they base their original laws on? So again, I'll give you a few minutes here to answer these three questions. So again, going over the three questions. Name some people that drafted the Second Continental Congress. And again, draft means to write. What did it declare? Referring to the Second Continental Congress. Did it say we want free hamburgers every week? And then 15, what did the US base much of its original laws on? Okay. Now we've finished 45, so we have 19 pages to go. I just said we had 20. Okay, that's for Sodom. So here, here, here. Okay. Back to the just super delicious lecture. Okay, so I stopped at above the law. No, actually, Declaration of Independence. Okay, so I'm here just to show you. Here. Which not only outlined the grievances against Britain and declared the colonies free and independent, but also incorporated John Locke's doctrine of unalienable rights, which you hear today, including life and liberty. Okay. So continuing. After about 84 revisions on July 4th, there's that beautiful day, July 4th, 1776. That's when we do our fireworks here, which should be coming up in 2 months. Congress adopted the Declaration by unanimous vote of the delegates of 12 colonies, 12 of the to be 13. Only New York abstained because representatives had not been authorized to vote. But they fixed that, as you can see. However, days later, the New York Provincial Congress endorsed the declaration. Yay! So now we had 13. John Hancock was the first to sign the document, which was considered an act of treason against King George III of England. So I've had students through the years ask me, what is treason? Okay, that is something, every country has a different level of what is considered treason, but I'm guessing, or pretty sure that a universal one would be, let's say you're from Mexico. If you give spy documents to another country for money, and this puts Mexico in danger, that is an act of treason. So Mexico might kill you or put you in prison for the rest of your life. North Korea, if I'm told if you own a Bible, this is considered an act of treason against Kim Jong-un, and you will also be put in kongbak for the rest of your life or killed. So that is what treason is, right? Or again, if you get married and you don't give your wife your check, your work check, she will tell you that is an act of treason. So again, this act of treason would be against King George III of England. It's rumored that he practiced writing his name prior to affixing his famous signature, which means placing his famous signature rather boldly to the historic document. spawning the expression about leaving one's John Hancock. So what that's trying to say is if you talk to American people and you say, did you sign that document? Usually people said, yes, I put my John Hancock on there, right? That's what they're referring to this situation. His was so bold and so big, that's the one most people see or remember when they read the copy, which I think is in the Smithsonian Institution. So ending up here, with the Declaration of Independence, the United States of America was born in Philadelphia State House, now Independence Hall. This important document, with its sharp yet poetic language, finally convinced the British and the French that the American colonies had had enough and were determined to be an independent republic. So remember that when people tell you, we're democracy, we're an independent republic. No one, least of all King George, could ignore the situation. So I have a couple of questions here. Or is it possible? Looks like only I have one question. That's too kind. Can you give me half an hour so I can think of 4 more questions? You won't do that? Okay, well, let me get to the one question then. It looks like we finished the reading. Is that possible? We're early. I don't like this. I got to find the other 19 pages. So, is it possible I only wrote 16 questions? I must be getting slow. Should I write this correctly here? Okay. The Declaration of Independence convinced King George of what? What did it convince him of? Did it convince him that the colonists were his friends and they loved him and they wanted to make cookies for him? What did the Declaration of Independence, the document, convince King George of? Okay. Okay. Now, because I know how my students just itch about leaving early and disappearing and, am I supposed to do something? Why can't I just go have coffee? Right? So my thinking is, we're about half an hour early and we finished all the lecture and all the questions. So should I let you go? Right? And of course, I'll have students, yeah, let me go. But I've also had requests of some students that, because my students are always going to complain about something, right? Hey, how do we know if the answers we put on the questions are true? It's a good question. Should I be mean and say, well, I leave it up to you? Or like right now, since I have some time, like 30 minutes, I can go over the answers of questions weeks 1, 2, and 3. Like I said, this is week 4. This will not be on the midterm. But questions 1, 2, and 3 will. So I think I'll do that. So students don't say, well, some students don't say, well, he didn't go over those, so I have no idea, so I'm not going to do anything. No. I'm going to go over those right now, right? Even though you're an intelligent group, right? Okay. All right. Hopefully you're ready. Hopefully you have your, because you're in your home, you're in your favorite chair, you're in your favorite room, right? So hopefully you have your material from the prior 3 weeks. Oh no, I left it at my girlfriend's condo. What are you talking about? Right? Okay. I can only do so much since I can't even see you and talk to you. Okay, so I'm going to go over the first, starting with the first weeks. Okay. Okay. See if we got these. All right. In 1483, who did Columbus ask to endorse his plan to sail to Asia? Okay. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. That's who he asked. Okay. What did Europeans want from Asia at this time and why? They wanted spices. Remember, this is a two-parter. They wanted spices. Why? Because there was no refrigeration and the spices kept the meat fresh for a number of days afterward. Okay. What were the names of Columbus's 3 ships? Weren't they the Temujin, the Okchir, and the Tamir? Was that the name of the ships? Okay, the Pinta, Maria, and what's the other one? Because one got burned, so I'll give you 2. The Pinta, Santa Maria, and we'll see if you can find the other one on your own. Have to be a little tough sometimes. Okay, next question. What did the King and Queen of Spain offer the first sailor to land? Okay, I think it was something like 20,000 sovereigns or gold, but you'll see that they didn't offer them sausages or tacos. Okay. What did Columbus call the first native people he met? He called them Indians. 6, why did he call them this? Because he thought he was in India. Remember, he was trying to go to India and he got lost. What was the name of the first colony Columbus established in the New World? San Salvador. Okay, what were the new foods that Columbus discovered? You can give me any ones you want. It don't have to be a set rule. It doesn't have to be 10, but there's a few there, something like maybe corn, pumpkins, right? Things like that. Remember, these were not in Europe at the time. And what did the Europeans teach the natives to do? And what was considered modern farming at the time? Okay, and they brought cattle, so how to deal with cattle. Okay. And what did the natives have no resistance to? And they were a pure, clean people, and so they had no resistance, no immunity to these diseases, smallpox, chickenpox, things like that, that the dirty sailors brought over after months and months at sea without any type of bathing and having rats and paquiboles and all kinds of things running around on the ship. So that's why poor folks were clean and clean. Okay. Let me check something here. I want to make sure. Okay. See if I have these. Okay. All right, so we have to go to the second week here. U.S. history through 1876. So Roanoke and Jamestown colonies. Who led a European expedition to America in 1584? So there's a date there. You can find that. That's an easy one. And where did he land? Okay. So where did he land? Anybody knows? Virginia. You don't know. Remember the girl's name, the first baby. Where was the Jamestown settlement located? Same answer, Virginia. Okay. Now, here we go. The people who went to Jamestown traded free passage, means they didn't pay for the couple of months trip on those ships. For what? That was they traded their freedom. They became indentured servants for 5 to 7 years. So they were like slaves at that time. Who was chosen the leader of Jamestown? The most common name in the United States, John Smith. Captain John Smith. Okay. Who was Pocahontas? So I'll let you answer that any way that you can. You know that she was a native lady. You can talk about her saving John Smith if you want. Just give me any kind of definition about who she was, right? And Pocahontas would be one of the last natives to be accepted where? Was she accepted in the gym club, the 24-hour fitness? What was she accepted in? She was the last to be accepted into British society. If you remember, at first they encouraged, because they had so many, a small amount of settlers, that they could marry native ladies. Later they decided against that. She was one of the last to be accepted into British society. What was the top crop of the New World? Was it kimchi? Was it corn? No guess? Well, you smoke it nowadays. It was tobacco. Tobacco was the top crop. That's another thing that came from the West. Europe did not have tobacco at the time, believe it or not. What did Pocahontas die of? Okay. I'll give you the general. You can find the actual. You got to do a little work, you guys. She died of some kind of disease. So I mentioned earlier some diseases that came through. So make sure you find the correct one. Don't put on the midterm when the question is, what did Pocahontas die of? And you put, oh, COVID-19. Okay, that's a fail right there. So Jamestown became the capital of what state? I've already said it twice. I'm not going to say it again. Think of the baby. Okay. And yeah. So that's the questions for the second week. And now we'll re-go over the questions from last week, week 3. Okay. So what or which group wanted to purify or clean the Church of England? So purify goes into what their name was. Purify. So the people were known as the Puritans. Who were the separatists, the people on the other side? They chose a separate conversation or congregation, which means a church, not belonging to the Church of England. So they chose a separate one. And where did these folks escape to, the separatists? In the beginning, a lot of them escaped to the Netherlands for freedom. Okay. So continuing for the second set, who were the Pilgrims? Again, do a little work there on your own, but they had the first Thanksgiving with the natives. I'll give you that much of a giant hint. Which ships did they take to the New World? Okay, might be a trick question, but which was the famous one that they came on? One was not shipworthy, so they came on the Mayflower. How long did the voyage take, my students? One day, couple of hours. They locked into O'Hare Airport in Chicago. No, on the ship it took 2 months. Okay, over the Atlantic Ocean, which I'm not asking you about the Atlantic Ocean. Where did they land? Okay, did they land in Long Beach or Catalina? They landed in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, or Massachusetts. Should I ask you the year? Ask you a year question, which I normally don't. What year was that? Maybe I'll put that on the test. 16 something, right? We'll see if I feel kind. Next, what was the name of the first colony? The world famous Plymouth colony. Okay. Which native person helped them? And that is Samoset. Okay, that's a fellow that somehow walked in and was able to speak English to them just by listening to them over a couple of months' time. Between 1629 and 1640, again, I'm giving you the dates, how many colonists or how many more colonists arrived? So within the next 11 years, 20,000 new colonists arrived. I'm contemplating, should I put a number one in there? When you guys know the number one, you love it because you just write a number, but we'll see. King Charles I granted what? The charter for the Massachusetts Bay Colony. That sounds like one you guys might forget. I'll probably throw that out. Because I'm giving you all, but I throw out a lot of them because I give you less questions. So, but you got to know them because you don't know what I'm going to ask, right? What did Puritanism value? So these Puritans, what were their values? Did they value marijuana, alcohol, and wild debauchery? What did they value? Hard work, the need for education, and good business sense. So there's three. Who sometimes attacked these folks? That's pretty easy. There was only one group of people there originally, the natives, right? 14. Who tried to subdue or take over the colony? So there's a difference between small attacks, like the native folks, and then who tried to actually take it over with the now, 20,000 colonists. England, of course. We know all our early problems come from England, so that's an easy one for you. Their town meetings were the first of what in the United States? And that's democratic institutions, because everybody had to agree on things. So those are the first of the democratic institutions. In the Puritan town, who was the most important? Does anybody remember who that was? And maybe I won't give you the answer. I'll let you look up that answer, and I'll put it on the test. If you do the Lefford, you got a free answer there. You know at least one of my questions, okay? All right, so I've done the review now. I've gone over the questions and answers for the first 3 weeks. The first 3 weeks will be the only material covered on the midterm. Week 4 will be set for the final. I'm kind. I don't give you new stuff. So I think I can chop a lot of these questions away and you'll still have a good amount of questions to deal with, okay? So hopefully you enjoyed today. Hopefully we all are on the same page. We know that we have to listen to the lecture and we have to do the work and send them to the teacher, right? Songsenyim, sensei. So I shall see you guys next week, unless you're taking my other class for the afternoon, then I'll see you after this one. Okay, so take care and see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.